Hey guys, my name is Loveless and we are back with Quirk Knife. This story is amazing. I will say it every single episode. Because it just is that. And so let's get on to it. Izuku is a very strange person, but it's not a bad thing. Hitoshi has never met anyone like this boy, this mystery of a kid. Hitoshi sees himself as above average student. Thankfully, his natural intelligence outweighs his lack of motivation. Midoriya, though, isn't human. It has to be a quirk. Midoriya is flying through his classes with ease, often completing several lessons in the same amount of time that it would take an average person to complete one. On the school's website, it's written that a one term or semester should take about 4 months, in which the smarter or more dedicated students could complete in about 3. For Midoriya, if Hitoshi's brief calculations were correct, continuing at the pace that he is now will result in completing his entire term in just under 2 months. Was that even possible? Not to mention Midoriya casually throwing out that he's completed the exam in under half the time within 98%. To create some perspective, Hitoshi finished in 2 hours and 33 minutes with an 86%, the top quarter of most examinees. So a 98%? It has to be some sort of intelligence enhancing quirk. But Hitoshi thought that the knife throwing had something to do with his quirk. Who would have that as a regular hobby? Yet again, Midoriya wasn't just anybody regular. That was for sure. The kid talked to himself, made gross jokes that Hitoshi would never admit he found funny, and casually cleaning up the entire shoreline of garbage out of his own curiosity and will. Midoriya wanted to clean the beach, and Hitoshi could barely roll out of bed in the morning. But Hitoshi didn't get out of bed this morning. Take the loss for today. Sadness, although Hitoshi knows it'll be back soon. Anyways, Izuku Midoriya. As much as he said he has a mom, something isn't adding up. Everything has different bodies, of course. And Hitoshi wasn't exactly muscular, but Midoriya isn't just small and thin. He's underweight, and the kid practically inhales food that Kabuto brings like he hasn't eaten in days. Like no one is feeding him. Despite his size, Midoriya can definitely hold his own, casually wheeling down an entire fucking fridge from the beach to the junkyard like it was something he does every day, and which Hitoshi guesses is true. Either way, Midoriya got a hell of a lot of secrets, but Hitoshi understands what it's like wanting to keep your life from others. He wasn't one to push for answers. Yet, what if Midoriya was in a dangerous situation? If something were to happen to him, Hitoshi would have no choice but to blame himself, knowing he could have done something if he had only asked. In hopes of getting Midoriya to talk about himself, Hitoshi decided to take the risk of sharing something first. You asked me about what I wanted to do for high school. Midoriya looked up from his English essay he was typing, stretching his arms above his head and nodding. Yes, I did. Why? Hitoshi shifted nervously in his seat, keeping his eyes on the closest bookshelf as he responded. Well, I want to go to UA. I want to be a hero. Waiting for some sort of ridicule like the other kids usually did, Midoriya's eyes lit up as he flashed a huge smile. It was nearly blinding. Wow! You're gonna be a hero? Oh, what's your quirk? Hitoshi's stomach dropped. There's where things always go wrong, where people label him as a villain. Would Midoriya do the same? Brainwashing. I can make people follow my orders. This is where Midoriya should scoff. Tell him that you can't be a hero with a quirk like that and run for the hills. But no, Midoriya only smiles wider. Oh my god, that's so fucking epic. Are you kidding me? Hitoshi couldn't think straight. Did he just call his quirk epic? But it's a villain's quirk. Midoriya's smile disappeared faster than ever before. Huh? Who told you that? Everyone? Midoriya frowned deeply. Are you kidding me? You're fucking dumber than you look. Hitoshi blinked slowly. Was something wrong with his hearing? Think about it. Midoriya raised his hands high. You could solve so many situations without even having to resort to violence. My first thought is, in a hostage situation, you can trick the villain into surrendering, not putting the victim in the line of fire whatsoever. Midoriya wasn't done. Or where heroes with flashy quirks couldn't use them because it would cause too much damage or make things worse. You would be able to fix that. Shinto, your quirk is dope as hell. What came next? It made Shinto's eyes grow wide. You'd be an amazing hero. Midoriya gave him one last thumbs up and began typing again, pinching the bottom of his lip and muttering under his breath. Hitoshi watched for a moment longer, then clearing his throat once more. You should come with me to UA. Did he say something wrong? Azuka was wearing a strangely serious expression to his face, one that Hitoshi couldn't recall seeing before. I mean, I'm not meant to be a hero, he spoke quietly, suddenly finding his nails very interesting. Before Hitoshi could respond, Midoriya perked up with a gasp. But I can totally help you. Hitoshi frowned. It wasn't that he didn't want help, but what was with the initial reaction? He was daring himself to press further and backtracked, but Midoriya exploded in excitement. Listen, okay, ever since I was young, I've always been really interested in quirks and heroes. I've been doing these little studies, like analysis, where I break down a quirk, analyzing their strengths, their weaknesses, potentials, and drawbacks, even weapons, supporting items, and fighting styles. Hitoshi was still confused, and Midoriya chuckled. What I'm saying is that I have a wide span of knowledge on quirk use, combat, defense, all that jazz. I can help you. Hitoshi leaned back in his seat. So you take fanboy notes. Midoriya frowned again. Yes, but in detail. I'll find you a fighting style and we can train together. Besides, we low-key already started with the bleach cleaning. Hitoshi was feeling a bit too lucky at that moment. You want to help me? Yes. And Midoriya squealed nervously. I mean, I've lost all my notes recently, like a shit ton, but I've been making more in my spare time. I can go see if I can find my old ones. Well, that's another red flag. Free time? There's no way he has even more time. He's literally always with Hitoshi, day and night. And he lost his notes, yet he can go find them? The notes were either lost or they weren't. Midoriya is contradicting himself, and Hitoshi wanted to know why. Look, this can be a favor I owe you. I'll make a training schedule and everything. Midoriya was seeming so confident and excited. How could Hitoshi say no? Besides, it's not like he had any money to afford any professional personal trainer, and perhaps Midoriya would be good at this. It couldn't possibly do any harm. Okay. Hitoshi huffed. Okay? I said okay. Midoriya jumped out of his seat. Awesome! We'll get started right away. Hasashi has been all over the place over this whole missing child situation. And a partner is supposed to calm their significant other, right? Shoto wasn't an exact expert even after all these years, but he always does his best. To attempt putting his husband's mind at ease, Shoto is currently taking time out of his patrol to spare a quick look at the remains of the fallen apartment building, just looking around for any possible clues that might help. The area hasn't been cleaned up yet since the case hasn't officially closed, and the police don't want any risk of tampering with any newly discovered evidence. So it's been left the same. Been to shift through small pieces of rubble, unsure of what he should be keeping an eye out for. They knew the kid didn't die on the scene, so it's not like he would find a body, hopefully. While focusing on one area at a time, Shota spotted some movement in the corner of his eye that he automatically prepared to fight against the villain. But he stopped when he saw a shadow manually pushing and lifting rubble around the concrete space. Okay, the figure was quite small, dressed in large dark clothing, head hiding underneath a hoodie of the sweater. The only real distinctive attributes on the figure was the yellow backpack and large, well-worn red high-top shoes. Shota approached quietly and carefully, like if it was some wounded animal, their face hidden by not only the hood, but a mass of untruly dark curls. Wow! Shota startled as the figure looked at him. Eraserhead, you're so cool! He couldn't lie. Shota was startled the kid recognized him. He wasn't an underground hero for no reason. He shook his head to escape his thoughts. What are you doing here? This is a crime scene, you know. The kid picked up a dusty notebook and blew the dirt off of the cover. I know. Although soft voice must have been a young teenage boy, he sounded similar to boys at UA. He slotted the notebooks in his backpack and continued looking. Because of your ability, you essentially fight Quirkless. The kid spoke up again. Shota faltered. Was that a question? Yeah, I suppose so. The kid hummed and put another notebook in his bag, not following up with his statement. Shota's mind wandered to Izuku Midoriya. Perhaps this was him. It would make sense if the child wants to return to try to find his belongings, and that would explain the notebooks. On the other hand, why would a child voluntarily return to the scene where their mother has been crushed and they lost literally everything? Knowing it was better to be safe than sorry, Shota sighed and carefully prepared his capture weapon. Obviously, you know I'm Eraserhead. What's your name? The kid froze for a moment and slowly zipped up his backpack. My name? Oh dear Lord, please don't let Shota take down a grieving, traumatized child. It wasn't exactly on his bucket list. The kid laughed quietly, and Shota replied, Yeah, what's your name? The kid snorted and slapped a hand over his mouth, choking out what he thought was so funny. Mike. Shota hummed, Do you have a family name? The kid's face was red from holding in his laughter, but blurted out an answer. Hawk. Oh. Oh wow, real comical problem child. That was the thing. Being a teacher and surrounded by teenagers all day, a joke like this didn't come as a shocker anymore. Uh-huh. Shota nodded slowly. Real good. Can you come with me then? I can help you home. You shouldn't be out at 1 a.m. on your own. Yeah, he'd bring this kid home. Also known as a police station. The kid adjusted his backpack on his shoulders and nodded. Yeah, thanks. I don't live too far from here. Just down the road. Wait, what? Mom would kill me if she knew I was out, the kid explained while climbing out of the rubble. You won't tell her, will you? Shota couldn't respond now because now he was even more confused than he was at the beginning of this conversation. So this wasn't Izuku Midoriya? This was just some random boy digging through the remains of a building? Before Shota could analyze the situation, a fist swiftly met his crotch, and the kid took off ridiculously fast. Shota bit the inside of his cheek to keep himself from swearing out loud, activating his quirk and launching its capture weapon. The kid didn't even flinch when Shota erased his quirk. Everyone always had some type of reaction. Strange. As his scarf approached the boy's ankle, the kid leaped over the loop of fabric and disappeared around the corner of the closest building, and Shota knew he was too late. That little shit punched me in the balls! Shota groaned and returned to the area the boy was picking around, finding a torn and water-damaged notebook. On the cover, he was able to make out the title Hero Analysis, and of course, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku ran as fast as his legs would carry him, tripping twice because his eyes were trained on the night sky. Izuku adored heroes growing up, and obviously that included underground heroes like Eraserhead, and he knew how often he jumped over rooftops. Izuku couldn't get caught. What if he was in trouble? It had occurred to him that the police would probably discover Inko Midoriya had a child, but would they really look for him? They wouldn't if they knew he was quirkless, that's for sure. Izuku had never been more grateful for all the running he had did from Kacchan and his followers in school. It made him fast and high endurance skill. Even cleaning the beach has improved his fitness level greatly, actually improving a bit of his muscles and his bones. What if it has nothing to do with his mom? What if they just discovered his borrowing? Izuku only ran faster at the thought, panting breathlessly as he dove into an old storage facility, slamming the door behind him and bending forward to catch his breath. Meeting Eraserhead? Good. Punching Eraser in the nuts? Not so good. But hey, the man had it coming. He trying to trick a kid. He was obviously trying to take him over to the police station or something like that. Izuku trudged across the cold concrete ground, the light from the moon shining through the large windows, the only reason he could see, flopping down on the black sleeping bag and in front of the thrift store. He didn't actually steal for once, but he used the money that he had left because the thrift store was a family-owned store. Morals! Izuku opened his backpack and carefully removed the notebooks he was able to recover, only locating 4 intact. The number of notebooks he found were 4, 7, 10, and 11. Pretty lucky. The 5th one he gathered as well, but it had too much water damage to read. He wasn't able to identify the number. Using a flashlight from his phone, he opened Hero Analysis number 11 and ran his fingers through one of the pages, an in-depth analysis on a young hero climbing the ranks rapidly, Hawks. Izuku chuckled at the small, smiley face written on the corner of the page, something his mom always put when she liked one of his drawings. A small spot of the page was damp, and another, and another. And is the roof leaking? That must be it. Oh, Izuku was crying. Izuku hastily wiped his eyes. He didn't want to feel weak, but the tears kept coming, so he put the notebook aside and let the tears splash onto his pants. His sniffles echoed in the empty building. Empty. He was alone. Izuku couldn't stop for the life of him as the tears intensified. His nose beginning to sting from sniffling. His chest was burning. It was so hard to breathe. For the first time, his mom wasn't there to rub his back. His mom wasn't there to hold him tight and tell him everything was going to be okay. His mom wasn't there to say she loved him. Izuku will never get to tell her that he loves her ever again. Izuku wrapped his arms tightly around himself, unsure of what he was trying to achieve. He only tried harder, his mind beginning to swim and his vision beginning to grow darker. His small hands gripped the fabric of his shirt desperately until they flew into his hair, tugging hard. He was alone, in the dark, sobbing. What would Kachan say if he saw him now? Something about being weak, quirkless Deku. Probably add a little suicide baiting in there to sell the point. It's what Kachan's good at, along with everything else he does. Izuku thought, he'll never be good at anything. He'll never be good enough. Everything he's done just ends up catching in flames, and everything he touches breaks. How long until Shinso breaks? How long until his only friend realizes what a nuisance he is and makes a run for it? Izuku's mind wandered to their conversation earlier in the day. How he had offered to help train Shinso. That meant it was up to him to prepare Shinso for UA. If Izuku fails, his friend fails. The problem is, Izuku fails at everything. He fails at making his father proud, he fails at gaining a quirk, he fails at being strong enough for Kachan, he fails at making friends, he fails at becoming a hero, he fails at protecting his mother. For the first time since Izuku was an orphan, he cried all night, working through anxiety attack after anxiety attack. They won't stop, and those messy thoughts wouldn't leave him alone. The ones that people told him so many times before. Maybe it'll be easier to follow their advice. It would mean he wouldn't have to deal with this entire situation anymore. It's not like anyone was around to miss him. Life was nothing more to offer him. Because all he wanted was his mom. A child just misses his mother. Mom, Izuku croaked out as the early sun began to shine through the windows. His eyes were bloodshot red and puffy, his scalp sore from the hair pulling in pain. Mom, I miss you. Oh my god, that is so sad. I'm gonna cry. Orphan Izuku, that hurts. That really does. Hurts me in the feels. But that's just how this story goes. So if you want to see more of this heartbreak, this whole story is like angst, but with a happy ending, more or less. That's what this whole story is. Even though that it's ongoing, I do know it has a happy ending. But it's so good, but it hurts my heart. But if you want to see more of this, you know what to do.